you're good friends with Tom Segura.
Yeah,
And
we're related. We're cousins.
you're kidding me.
No.
Really?
We're cousins.
I can see it now.
Yeah.
His commitment to fitness has been pretty fascinating for me to see. And he's kind of treating his body like an athlete to facilitate his chosen pursuit of comedy. I think even Bert is trying to sort his sort of health and fitness out one step at a time too.
Bert's the control experiment. Like if the experiment is about willpower, tenacity, and discipline, Tom is the active condition, and Bert is the control.
But I'm seeing more and more people now, especially performers that aren't within the realm of physical fitness, really starting to understand, if I want to perform outside of this, I need to think like an athlete. I need to be looking at my hydration. I mean, Tom had his trainer travel with him on the road for months.
Yeah. Yeah, Tom's really serious about his craft, as is Bert. They just have different approaches. And when it comes to fitness, by the way, I notice Bert is training. He's working out. I've been trying to get Bert to quit drinking alcohol for a while. Not because I'm the arbiter of who should do what. I never tell people what to do, by the way. I provide information. People can do what they want. I'm a live and let live. I want to be very clear about that. But it's out of care and affection for Bert that, excessive alcohol consumption over long periods of time, bad. I mean, we can keep that one pretty brief. So, but Bert is working out. But Tom, I know because we talk and I've spent some time with him that he trains hard, and he sees it as integral with his writing, with his ability to show up for his family and business, et cetera. I mean, I think we're finally approaching a time in human history where we accept at the level of the scientific community all the way through to wellness and just generally that the brain and body are intimately linked at the level of what if you want to improve your body, do something for your mind. If you want to improve your mind, do something for your body. And it's so clear now what we all need to do. I mean, we can get into the details, but at a macro level, it's clear that we should all be getting that 150 to 200 minutes of zone 2 per week, or walking a lot. If you live in a big city, you're probably getting that. But then also getting your heart rate up to max heart rate once a week, doing some sprint type stuff in whatever format is safe for your body. Some people it's swimming, some people it's rowing, some people it's running. For me, it's running, but not everyone enjoys running or can do it. And then everyone should be doing at least 6 sets of resistance training per muscle group per week, minimum. Hard sets. To failure, okay, maybe not. Close to failure, yeah, probably. And it's especially the groups that have been, let's just say, averse to weight training, right? Typically women, older folks, although now more women weight train because they understand that in the absence of a lot of injected or prescription anabolic hormones, they're not going to get enormous.
That's the funniest thing for me.
That's finally died, I think, right? That concept that, if one lifts weights, that they're going to become huge.
Bulky. Do you realize, to all of the women who are out there that are concerned about lifting weights because they're going to get too bulky, do you know how hard I've worked to try and desperately become bulky for 15 years? Like, I've worked really, really difficult, hoping that one day I'll become bulky. And I think it's dissipating a lot now, but there was for a long time this fear that, do a couple of bicep curls and you're going to look like the Incredible Hulk. It's like, me and my friends have really, really prayed for that to happen forever. You do not need to be concerned. It's not going to creep up on you, and one day you're going to wake up and be this sort of vascular beast.
Right. A couple of things about that. I mean, from a longevity standpoint, we know that maintaining healthy nerve to muscle function, neuromuscular junctions, is one of the things that resistance exercise does, and it's highly correlated with cognitive function into older age. And for those people, I guess going back to our earlier conversation, we'll probably do this a few times in the course of this episode, but the thing you want to do the least, that's actually the thing where you stand to build up your AMCC the most. So for me, that would be language learning or learning of musical instruments. Two things that I love music, and but it's just so hard for me. So it sits there on the shelf as a possible way to activate the AMCC. But in terms of actual resistance training has an interesting property that I haven't heard discussed before that pertains to men and women who do it, which is unlike cardiovascular training. During a resistance training bout, because of the blood flow to the muscle, the so-called pump, you get a little window into what the potential progress would look like. That pump dissipates post-workout, and then if you allow sufficient rest and nutrition, et cetera, you'll get a hypertrophy response. But it's so unlike other forms of exercise. Like if I go to a yoga class and I stretch or I'm doing some movement, I get to that limit where I'm quaking and I fall over. it's very different than getting a picture of just how flexible I will be the next time, and then losing that until I adapt. With running, your lungs, sometimes your throat burns, as you pointed out, and that's showing you your limit. And of course, then there's an adaptation response that then allows you to perform at that level without the burning the next time, right? If you allow sufficient recovery. But with weight training, it's kind of interesting. The whole pump thing was never something that I really drew me to weight training very much, but it's interesting because you get a glimpse into what the progress might look like. And so I would say for anyone who's worried about getting too big, unless your pump is bigger than you want to be, you're not going to get that, right? And so you actually get a window into how much potential size increase you're going to create. But it's so different than other forms of exercise in that way. It's like, what other thing in life, like if you took a language class and you're like, oh, I'm going to learn Japanese, and you go, and during the class, you actually become fluent for a moment, then it's taken away, and then you adapt and become fluent. So it's a very special form of exercise that offers some unique gifts to us as incentives for going back. But look, as I say this, I realize some people hate resistance training. They love running. Some people hate running. They love resistance training. Some people, I realize, hate exercise. But if you hate exercise, you should do it anyway.
AMCC.
And you're getting the AMCC.
So going back to what you think might be happening to someone like Tom, who is like a cognitive athlete, right? But largely the physical realm. Comedians, apart from, I guess, Until Joe, which is part of the beginning of like the comedian bro lifter revolution. Before him, it wasn't exactly like, I wasn't looking to comedians as being the vanguard of health and fitness and stuff like
Belushi.
that.
I mean, look at Belushi, right? I mean, he was the epitome of lack of health and sadly died, right?
Talk to me about what would be happening to the brain of somebody like Tom, who pivots from being maybe 40 pounds overweight, perhaps. I don't know how big he got at his biggest, but lost a good bit of weight. And it wasn't just losing weight, it was then gaining muscle. So Dr. Gabrielle Lyon world of like muscle-centered medicine, he's going to benefit from that. The insulin sensitivity, there'll be like some physiological changes. But talk to me, for the people who are cognitive athletes, what's going to happen in someone like Tom's mind when he changes his body? Yeah,
so improved blood flow to the brain. I mean, the brain is the most metabolically demanding organ in the entire body. It consumes a ton of glucose if you eat carbohydrates. Yes, it can run on ketones, but blood flow through arteries, veins, and capillaries to the neurons of the brain it's inseparable from cognitive function. So when you improve blood flow to the brain, you improve cognitive function, period. When you restrict blood flow to the brain, even at a micro level, you impair cognitive function. In addition to that, we know that several forms of age-related cognitive decline and dementia are considered nowadays, some people will even call it type 3 diabetes, although that's a controversial term, diabetes of the brain. This is why a number of people who have Alzheimer's go on ketogenic diets and get some degree of relief. It's not that, by the way, it's not a cure for Alzheimer's, but some people do better when they switch the major fuel source for the brain. But in the case of Tom, as an example, but someone who gets into exercising regularly, both resistance training and cardiovascular training, you're getting improved blood flow, you're getting far less inflammation of the brain. Inflammation is cognitive depleting, reducing inflammation, cognitive enhancing. That's absolutely true across the board, right? In animal studies and in humans. In addition to that, there are a lot of bloodborne factors, two of which I'll just highlight now, just for sake of time, only two. First of all, when we do cardio, that it positively impact brain health and memory in particular. So when we do load-bearing cardiovascular exercise, so running as opposed to swimming, anything where the skeletal system is under some load, there's a hormone that's literally secreted from bone. I know we don't normally think of bones as endocrine organs, called osteocalcin. Osteocalcin is released from the bones under these load-bearing conditions. It can cross the blood-brain barrier, and we know that it plays an active role in promoting not just new cell production, but because that's a more minor component of neuroplasticity, but enhancement of nerve health and function in the hippocampus, which is an area that's instrumental for the formation of new memories. So there's something about movement of the body that signals to the brain, we're moving. You actually need to maintain or perhaps even enhance your ability to remember things. And this probably is an evolutionary conserved circuit that exists. We know it exists in mice as well. So that's one example. The other is that my colleague at Stanford, Tony Weiss-Corey, is best known for these young blood experiments where they'll take the blood or plasma from a young rodent and put it into an aged or demented rodent and see improvements in cognitive function. And outside the United States, there are some clinics, by the way, I'm not recommending people do this, that have shown improvements in cognitive function or even offsetting of Alzheimer's and age-related cognitive decline. This has led to the idea of like vampires and baby blood and this whole thing.
Adrenochrome.
Yeah, which is all crazy and conspiracy. I go on record saying that. But there's a recent paper that also from Tony's lab showing that if in animals that exercise regularly, if you take their blood or plasma and you supply that blood or plasma to aged or cognitively deficient animals, their cognition or their cognitive abilities improve. So there's something about blood of the exercised body that enriches the brain. It could be many different growth factors. It could be BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It could be things like IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor. It's probably going to be a cocktail of different things. As well as osteocalcin. And so what we want to think about is that when we exercise, and that's a broad statement, exercise or word rather, cardiovascular and resistance training, it creates a cocktail that then crosses into the blood-brain barrier that then creates a milieu of general growth, health, or at least maintenance of cognitive tissue that's there. So Tom's incredibly sharp. And of course, comedy requires not just memory, but also writing of new jokes, right? He's got to do Netflix specials for a long time. And I actually went and saw him in Aspen, a small venue. I flew out there to see him because I wanted to see him in a small venue, because in small venues is where comics often work out their new material. And I mean, just, to me, it was just astonishing, like to see the number of different thought threads. And one thing that makes Tom's comedy so wonderful, and other people like Richard Pryor did this exceptionally well too, is that he can switch personas very fast. So he's doing his voice, then he switches to his son's voice, then switches back. And the speed and precision with which he does that.
Very agile.
Makes it seem, we forget that they're very agile. And then he creates a panel of characters and then wipes that board away, right? He's the only guy up there, wipes that board away and then creates a panel of new characters. And so, I mean, that requires a lot of cognitive dexterity. So exercise is absolutely one of the best ways to improve brain function over time. And in addition to that, there's been so much interest in, should we do crossword puzzles? Should we, why is it that some people maintain cognitive function? I think what's very clear to me based on all that literature is that it's not one specific thing, crossword puzzles or social engagement or exercise. It's all of those things. But let's not forget the superagers, the people who are constantly trying things that are difficult, that are pressuring themselves a bit to do things that are difficult. Those people are offsetting, as far as we know, all of the major shrinkage of these brain structures that normally would shrink as people age. So we have a lot of control, but it does require effort. And I'll tell you, there's never going to be a pill or injection, whether or not it's Ozempic or something like it, but for the brain, there's no way. There's no way that you're ever going to recapitulate learning and effort. And yes, it requires time, but it's so clear. I mean, I don't know how many more papers in preclinical models and in humans one needs to see before they finally just, bite the bullet and
go and lift weights.
Lift weights and run and do cardiovascular training. It can't be one or the other.
Yeah.
The stereotype of like the big, let's just say big guy who's dumb, I don't think it's entirely, you meet some big folks that are smart, right? Yeah. But there is something in the kind of broad correlations of people who, people who tend to only do cardiovascular training, maybe it's a selection bias, like they're the people who are already avid readers or more kind of intellectual leanings, maybe get more involved in tennis, swimming, running type sports, rowing because of the schools they went to or whatever. But people who just lift weights, it does seem as if over time, I don't know, maybe Derek would tell us their neck is getting too big, they have sleep apnea. They don't seem as sharp, and they're often mouth breathers. Look at the really big guys in the gym. They're often
not strong,
and not just
jaw.
Between sets, not just after hard sets. I think they're asphyxiating themselves in sleep. We know this.
Yeah.
And then you look at runners and the people that have the kind of like the really svelte and they. And sure, they might maintain cognitive function, but their bodies are very vulnerable to injury.
Fragile.
And they always seem to be complaining about what hurts. This is like my friends who do a lot of extended training, unless it's David Goggins, who doesn't seem to have the circuit for complaining, at least certainly not online. They always seem to be complaining about injuries. So I think a combination of resistance training and cardiovascular training is, let's just face it, like you can't do one and not the other. If you want to be healthy all around, healthy of heart, healthy of body, healthy of mind, cognition improved or at least maintained as we age, you got to do both.
In other news, this episode is brought to you by Element. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium that will help to regulate your appetite, curb cravings, and optimize your brain health. You do not need coffee first thing in the morning. Your adenosine system that caffeine acts on isn't even active for the first 90 minutes of the day, but your adrenal system is, and salt acts on your adrenal system. Best of all, it just tastes phenomenal. This orange flavor is honestly like a godly nectar that I've been taking every single morning for over 3 years. Even when I'm on the road out here in LA, it is the first thing that I reach for every single morning. Best of all, they have a no BS, no questions asked refund policy where you can buy it 100% risk-free. And if you do not like it for any reason, you can get your money back and you don't even need to return the box. That's how confident they are that you'll love it. Head to the link in the description below or go to drinklmnt.com/modernwisdom to get a free sample pack of all 8 flavors with your first box. That's drinklmnt.com/modern wisdom. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip with Dr. Huberman, you will love the 3-hour episode that you can watch right here. Go on. Press it.